We set aside our feelings, but not completely, because we're here to be professionals, yes, but also empathetic. So, those of you who would like to join me, at such a crucial moment for a very specific civilian population, but really for the whole world in global terms, welcome to this combative journalism, but with a human face. And the moment we're in right now is absolutely crucial. It might seem like we can't do much about it, but in fact, it's quite the opposite. I'll explain it to you in more detail in a moment. The fact itself. Israel has just launched its largest ground offensive operation against the Gaza Strip. Preparation through massive bombings, tanks, infantry, all of that supposedly to put an end to Hamas once and for all. And also, this time for sure, to take full control of that territory. Behind this decision, there are all kinds of secret meetings and, of course, interests, especially from Washington. But there's also a risk. The risk of triggering a regional war and of endangering the lives of the hostages for whom they're supposedly carrying out all this barbarity. And of course, to finally put an end to this genocide that they started quite some time ago against the civilian population of the Strip. We're here to be professional, yes, but also combative and empathetic. So now, with our hearts in our throats, let's see what's really happening in the Gaza Strip. We start, as usual, from the beginning. It all began with those massive bombings by Israel against the Gaza Strip, which were nothing more than preparations for the ground operation, which is going to break out from now on, since in fact, Israel launched it just a few hours ago, right? Because in military terms, it's absolutely impossible to take control of the territory without going on foot. That is, without setting foot on the ground. So through those bombings that we've all seen, absolutely without any shame, no hesitation in broad daylight has ended the lives of thousands of civilians and children. This must never be forgotten and should remain forever in the collective memory of anyone who wants to consider themselves even minimally human. Because of the ongoing genocide that Israel is committing in the Gaza Strip, it is an absolutely objective fact and, I believe, there should be no disagreement about it at the international level. That being said, this genocide is like a pretext to try to lose as few soldiers as possible, because now they want to take physical control of the Gaza Strip. A very juicy piece, clearly. Yes, for Israel and also for the United States. And it has been announced by the Israeli government as a quick and decisive operation. And this is exactly where we come in. The more noise is made about it, and the more the Israeli army gets bogged down in the operation in question, will the people of the Gaza Strip have a better chance of keeping a territory that is clearly theirs? And this is precisely the point, I think, where we should try to come together massively, sharing, liking, commenting, creating content, for those of us who are creators. A quick and decisive campaign. And that's precisely the key factor, the area where we can make the most impact. Why Washington? And here we come to how this decision has been received by Israel. He appears to have offered both political and logistical support to Israel, and personally to Netanyahu. But with one condition, that the campaign is really quick. The United States doesn't want to get involved in a media campaign against it. And in this sense, Marco Rubio, who just a short while ago traveled to Israel precisely to convey to Netanyahu this conditional support from Donald Trump. What they want is for Israel to achieve its goal, but for this to come at the lowest possible cost to the United States. That is, one of the key objectives in media terms is to manage to turn that war, which, according to the source, literally speaking, the United States, Donald Trump, calls Bibi's war into Donald Trump's war, because this is precisely the reputational cost that he doesn't want to take. But on the other hand, It's not just the reaction of the international community, but also the reaction of the Israeli community itself. Let's take it step by step. The international community, of course, has already expressed itself in absolutely negative terms, rejecting the Israeli campaign for the most part. The Arab countries are there, with each statement louder than the previous one. But the truth is that on this issue, they aren't really doing much. And in this sense, the only thing the Gaza Strip would probably need, please understand me well, would be something like a Russia to protect it. That is, exactly what Russia is doing right now with the civilian population of Donbass, which at one point was precisely attacked. For many years, it was being attacked by what we call the Kiev regime, that is, by the Ukrainian state. Once again, Washington's interests were behind it. Now someone needs to do the same with the Gaza Strip. Russia can't protect everyone, and in fact, it's already doing quite a lot for its own people. The Arab countries, who are clearly the ones that should take on this responsibility, aren't doing much. Let's be honest, yes. The United Nations has overwhelmingly, almost entirely, rejected the operation in Rafah. Gaza Strip. Probably what they're doing now with Donbass, attacked by their own. In this sense, what the Gaza Strip would need, most likely would be. And, once again, that's where we can make an impact in terms of the media, each one practically from their own home. And there are already people who are doing it, even if it's just to try. And I think we should try, which is the internal reaction of the Israeli population, which at this moment is extremely divided. There's a significant part of Israel that is not accepting the cost at all, neither political, nor military, nor humanitarian, of this operation, which is more the Israeli government's than Israel's itself, and therefore, personally, Netanyahu's. There have already been massive protests, and well, it's not known if people will take to the streets of the country again. But we have to try to make the Israeli population understand that this is not against them personally, but against what their government is doing to defenseless civilians. And no, probably, since it's me, we'll get exactly to the point where NATO propaganda tries to compare this with the war in Ukraine. But why do you think exactly that I'm reporting this from Donbass? I've come to Donbass many times, and I've basically ended up settling down here to live. Because here there are other people who have been suffering at the hands of the Ukrainian state, and who, unfortunately, can only be freed from that state through war. The same thing that the Gaza Strip should try to do, if it had the proper means to do so. But there is no Russia that can support them at this moment. We must somehow, I think, take on the role of their own Russia, even if it's just in terms of the media. Everyone should contribute what they can. Because what we are facing as humanity is really serious in humanitarian terms. We haven't experienced anything like this in many years. I'd never say anything like this. Don't let anyone talk to you about the war or Ukraine. In terms of civilian casualties, this doesn't even compare to practically anything that has ever happened on this strip of land. Right now, they're talking about the Israeli army evacuating 300,000 civilians to humanitarian points. But is this really telling us that there will be forced displacements? That there will be a food crisis? That there will be a water crisis? These people are going to be crowded together in who knows what kind of conditions, and they won't have anything at all to eat. In most cases, nothing to drink and no one to trust. They're going to go through a real hell on earth. In short, Israel seeks to show strength through a rapid military campaign on the ground. But allow me to say this, as someone who has spent years reporting as a war correspondent in Donbass, ground operations are hardly ever quick, especially when they aim to be decisive in terms of results. That's why the Russian Federation is now using the tactic of a war of attrition So, in all likelihood, Israel is going to end up bogged down in the operation it launched just a few hours ago. I think the main goal for all of humanity should be to do everything possible so that, along with Israel, the United States also gets bogged down. And therefore, along with Netanyahu, Donald Trump personally gets bogged down as well, so that God wills it. They end up having to leave that territory that has never been theirs, and where the only ones who should stay are the civilians of the Gaza Strip.